In the ancient world, few military formations were as disciplined or as well organized as the Persian Immortals. They were a standing force of 10,000 elite soldiers, maintained at full strength at all times. Whenever a man was lost, another immediately took his place, keeping the unit complete and its reputation intact. Drawn from Persian and Median nobility, these soldiers were trained from an early age in archery, close combat, and formation tactics. Their coordination and structure allowed them to adapt quickly on the battlefield, moving as a single, unified force. The Immortals became the model of consistency within the Persian army, a symbol of precision, endurance, and control that defined imperial warfare for centuries. Cyrus the Great didn't build the largest empire on Earth by being sentimental or by relying on outdated methods. When he toppled the Medes in 550 BCE, inheriting their vast territories, he also inherited a military system that was, frankly, a bit of a headache. He had a tribal levy, sure, loyal enough on campaign, but these warriors had farms and families. They'd drift home after the harvest, leaving the empire vulnerable. Conquest, and more importantly, holding on to that conquest at empire speed, required something different. It demanded a standing core, a professional army that could march year-round, quell rebellions, and scare provinces into staying put just by its presence. The answer was a hand-picked guard, a truly elite force recruited mainly from Persian and Median nobility. These weren't just any soldiers. These were men whose families' prosperity, their very status, was inextricably linked to the king's success. Their loyalty wasn't just earned, it was ingrained, a matter of self-preservation and dynastic ambition. The Greek historian Herodotus tells us this unit was fixed at exactly 10,000. The instant one man dropped, whether from injury, illness, or battle, a replacement was immediately brought in. He'd receive the fallen warrior's pay, his rations, even his bedding. To any outsider, the ranks simply never thinned. It created an illusion of invincibility, a wall of humanity that seemed to defy death itself. The Greeks, ever the pragmatists, coined the nickname Immortals. It wasn't really a compliment, was it? More like a cold, almost fearful observation. The king's favorite division simply refused to die. This constant replenishment wasn't just practical logistics. It was a stroke of psychological genius, a subtle but profound message to both allies and enemies. It said, "We are endless, we are inevitable." Becoming an immortal wasn't a career choice. It was a destiny, a brutal path that began almost in childhood. Training started young, often when boys were barely more than toddlers, learning the basics of horsemanship and archery. Royal estates, vast and well-resourced, provided the perfect proving grounds, endless space for riding, for shooting, for practicing the difficult art of loosing arrows while at a full gallop. By the age of 16, a candidate was expected to be proficient enough to loose 10 arrows in the time most ordinary soldiers fumbled for just one. Think about that for a second. 10 arrows, in the blink of an eye, with accuracy. That's incredible. Those who passed this initial, grueling inspection then took a solemn oath, sealed by Mithra, the ancient warrior god whose cult emphasized truth, loyalty, and strength. From there, it was off to Susa, one of the empire's grand capitals, for what amounted to the finishing school of empire. Drill was daily, relentless, and unforgiving. They learned to form an impenetrable shield wall, to wheel by companies with precision, to sprint in their scale corselets until the rhythm of command felt less like an order and more like their own heartbeat. Their equipment walked a fine line between speed and safety, a testament to Persian tactical philosophy. For protection, they carried a tall Garan shield, woven from osiers, willow branches, then soaked and dried until it became incredibly dense and tough. This wasn't heavy bronze, but it was surprisingly effective, capable of stopping arrows as well as many metal shields. Critically, it covered the warrior's entire left side, from head to knee. Underneath, they wore a fish-scale shirt of iron or bronze plates, laced together with silk thongs. This provided excellent protection against cuts and thrusts, yet it flexed with the torso, offering superb mobility. Their right hand typically carried a short spear, perfect for thrusting in close quarters or for forming a bristling hedge against a charge. When the line closed and things got truly personal, they'd switch to a Kopish-style sword, a curved blade designed to hook behind an enemy's shield, pull it aside, and deliver a devastating cut. But don't let the close combat gear fool you. Every immortal also slung a powerful composite bow across his back, along with a quiver of arrows. They were archers first, spearmen second, a dual role that utterly baffled Greek chroniclers, who were used to their highly specialized hoplites, each soldier having a single, defined job. This adaptability, this ability to switch roles seamlessly, was a hallmark of the Immortals' tactical genius. One of the unsung heroes of the Persian war machine was its almost ruthlessly efficient staff work, built on a base 10 simplicity that would make a modern military planner nod in approval. It was a system designed for clarity, rapid communication, and unflinching control. At the very bottom, 10 men formed a dathobam, led by a dathopatis. Think of him as a corporal, intimately familiar with his small squad. 10 of these dathobam then formed a company, or satapataba, under the command of a satapatis, a rank already equivalent to a modern captain, responsible for 100 men. Step up again, and you reach the hazarapatis, the commander of 1,000, the fundamental building block of every field order and strategic maneuver. And overseeing these 10 hazarapatis was the supreme marshal, often a close cousin of the king himself, ensuring both loyalty and direct access to royal authority. Because every immortal knew his exact place, his precise role within this perfectly structured hierarchy, the entire division could split like quicksilver to flow around hills, reform on the fly, or charge in complex formations like a diamond, a wedge, or a hollow square. All of this could happen without the shouting matches, the confusion, and the inevitable breakdowns in communication that so often crippled less organized tribal hosts. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about precision. It meant that a command issued at the top could ripple down through 10,000 men in moments, allowing for tactical flexibility that was revolutionary for its time. This organizational mastery was a silent weapon, often overlooked, but just as crucial as any spear or arrow. Persian doctrine, particularly when the Immortals were involved, was less a rigid set of rules and more a meticulously choreographed, 3-act performance designed to break an enemy's will and then their lines. It was a masterclass in combined arms, leveraging the strengths of different unit types in a sequence that maximized their impact. From a standing position, the front ranks of the Immortals would lock their Garen shields, forming a protective wall. Meanwhile, the rear 3 rows, often more, depending on the tactical situation, would arch arrows overhead. These were not just any arrows. They were fired from powerful composite bows, capable of reaching targets out to 200 meters with significant force. The initial casualties might have been modest, but the psychological effect was nerve-shredding. Imagine standing under a sky raining iron arrowheads, a constant, whistling terror. No shield boss, no matter how thick, felt quite thick enough to ignore a descending iron head. It was a relentless psychological assault, designed to sow panic and disorder long before any hand-to-hand combat began. Once the enemy was softened, perhaps even starting to waver, the Immortals' line would advance at a steady jog, spears leveled, shields interlocked. If the enemy, desperate to escape the arrow storm, rushed forward, they were met by a bristling, impenetrable hedge of spears and wicker shields. If they held their ground, they simply absorbed more arrows, their morale eroding with every whistling shaft. The Immortals weren't trying to break the enemy here. They were fixing them in place, like a pin through a butterfly, holding them steady for the next decisive blow. While the Immortals held the opponent in this agonizing pin, the true hammer would fall. This usually came in the form of the Persian heavy cavalry, often composed of the empire's finest horsemen, frequently noblemen themselves. These swift, powerful units would sweep around the flanks, showering the enemy with javelins to further disrupt their formations, then crashing home with devastating impact. The Immortals' job was to keep the anvil steady, to ensure the enemy line remained unbroken but immobile, until the sheer weight and momentum of the cavalry's charge snapped it like a twig. Greek historians, often disdainful of Persian military methods, frequently sneered at their soft, wicker shields and lighter armor. But on the baked Mesopotamian plains, where heavy metal plates could cook men alive under the scorching sun, lighter gear was a strategic advantage. It kept the Persians fast, agile, and mobile enough to dance between roles, archers one moment, spearmen the next, and to execute these complex combined arms maneuvers with devastating efficiency. Mobility wasn't a weakness, it was a core strength. Beyond their impressive tactical drills and fearsome weaponry, the Immortals wielded a potent, often overlooked weapon: psychological warfare. And uniformity itself was a massive part of that. Each Immortal wore the same vivid tunic, whether it was madder red, lapis blue, or saffron yellow, depended on the royal court's current fashion cycle. From a distance, they didn't look like 10,000 individual men. They looked like a single, terrifying organism, moving with unnatural precision. Their golden pomegranate finials, adorning the butts of their spears, bobbed in perfect synchronized rhythm as they marched. Even the horses of their supply trains, an often neglected detail in other armies, were groomed to identical standards. To a superstitious defender, huddled behind a wall, the message was chillingly clear. These weren't just men. These were extensions of the great king's will, a force that seemed almost supernatural. And the king, after all, never bled. This meticulous presentation, this relentless uniformity, was designed to inspire awe and terror. But the real psychological masterstroke was their name. When word spread, and you can bet the Persians made sure it spread, that replacements arrived for fallen Immortals before their bodies had even cooled, it had a profound effect. Garrisons, already demoralized, would sometimes surrender rather than face an enemy that, quite literally, seemed incapable of dying. Why fight a force that simply regenerates? A hydra that grows new heads as fast as you chop them off? This cultivated myth, this carefully constructed image of an unkillable legion, saved Persian lives and resources by winning battles before a single arrow was even loosed. It was a testament to the power of perception, a force multiplier that cost nothing but careful messaging. The first major clash between the burgeoning Persian Empire and the fiercely independent Greek city-states came on the windswept beach of Marathon. It was 490 BCE, and the Athenians, outnumbered but defiant, had seized the high ground, forcing the Persians to attack uphill across 800 meters of open, exposed sand. Datis, the Persian commander, a seasoned general, made a tactical decision. He sent his conscript infantry, often less motivated and less well-equipped, to engage first. He held his precious immortals, his elite reserve back, waiting for the opportune moment. When the Greek center, a solid mass of hoplites, surged downhill in their famous phalanx formation, the Persian wings, composed of those less experienced troops, buckled under the pressure. This was Datis's moment. He fed the immortals into the rupture, intending for them to exploit the weakness and roll up the Greek line. But the speed of the Athenian charge saved the day for Greece. The Greeks closed the distance so fast that the immortals, renowned for their archery, had virtually no time to deploy their bows effectively. They were forced into a close-quarters melee, a type of fighting where the Greek hoplite, with his heavier armor and longer spear, held a distinct advantage. Worse still, the battle revealed a crucial lesson for the Persians. A captured Greek panoply, a full set of armor, showed the immortals what they were up against. Heavier bronze, more extensive protection, and those longer, reach-advantageous spears. Persian casualties were relatively light in the grand scheme of things. Herodotus famously claims only 192 Athenians dead against a staggering 6,400 Persians, though modern historians debate these numbers. Regardless of the exact figures, the lesson stuck with the Persians. Greek armor plus Persian skill might be an unbeatable combination if not approached correctly. The idea, a seed of doubt and respect, would germinate for decades in the Persian military mind. Marathon was a defeat, yes, but it was also a brutal, effective training exercise. A decade later, Xerxes, Cyrus's grandson, launched an even grander invasion. He needed to crack the Greek alliance wide open, and the narrow pass of Thermopylae, a choke point between mountains and sea, looked like the perfect place for a prestige strike, a decisive blow to Greek morale. For 2 agonizing days, Xerxes threw his provincial levies, hundreds of thousands of them, against the Spartan-led phalanx, and they died in heaps, unable to dislodge the determined defenders. On day 3, with his patience wearing thin, Xerxes finally released the immortals, under the command of Hydarnes, a trusted general. The terrain at Thermopylae should have neutralized many of the immortals' advantages. There was no room to flank, no distance for their devastating archery barrages. It was a meat grinder, a direct confrontation that favored the heavily armored Greeks. Yet Hydarnes, proving the immortals weren't just brawn, located a goat path, a treacherous mountain trail that had been revealed by a local trader. Under the cover of darkness, he led his immortals on a grueling night march, circling the mountain and striking Leonidas and his Spartans from behind. Even then, the legendary Spartan shield wall held, at least long enough for the bulk of the Greek coalition to escape the trap. The immortals, fighting in unfamiliar, confined terrain against some of the fiercest warriors the ancient world had ever produced, suffered heavy losses. Greek sources hint at several hundred immortals falling, though Persian records, ever keen to maintain their image, euphemistically called them acceptable. The battle became legend on both sides. To the Greeks, it was proof that free men, even in the face of overwhelming odds, could bleed the great king's best. To the Persians, it was a confirmation that, given enough time, the right intelligence, and a clever commander, the immortals could crack any nut, no matter how tough. They might have paid a heavy price, but they achieved their objective. After the catastrophic naval defeat at Salamis, which effectively cut off Xerxes' supply lines, his general Mardonius wintered in Thessaly with the remnant of the Persian army, including the immortals. The next year, at Plataea, Mardonius faced a united Greek army, a force nearly twice the size of the one that had fought at Marathon. This time, however, the battlefield was open farmland, ideal terrain for Persian cavalry, a critical component of their combined arms strategy. Mardonius's plan was textbook combined arms, a classic three-act play designed to leverage every advantage. His horse archers would harass and soften the Greek lines, constantly peppering them with arrows and forcing them to maintain their tight, vulnerable formations. The Immortals would hold the center, acting as the unyielding anvil, absorbing the Greek counterattacks and keeping them pinned. Meanwhile, the powerful Persian cavalry would punch through the weakened wings of the Greek army, rolling them up and breaking their cohesion. It nearly worked. The relentless arrow fire from the Immortals and other Persian archers whittled down the Megarian contingent of the Greek army until it nearly broke. It took the Athenians, with their own skilled archers, to plug the gaping hole. The battle raged, a brutal back and forth. Then Mardonius, leading from the front, personally led a desperate cavalry charge against the Spartan lines. In the ensuing chaos, a Spartan counterstrike killed him. With the king's cousin and supreme commander fallen, the Persian line, already under immense pressure, began to unravel. Despite the collapse around them, the Immortals, true to their reputation, withdrew in good order, covering the retreat across the Asopus River. Plataea undeniably ended Persian hopes of conquering Greece, a crushing defeat for the empire. Yet, even in retreat, the elite guard's discipline under fire won grudging praise, even from the often vindictive Greek orators who loved to paint their enemies as cowardly. They might have lost the battle, but they maintained their honor and their fearsome reputation. By 331 BCE, Alexander's Macedonians had become an unstoppable force, shredding every Persian army sent against them. Now, at Gaugamela, Darius III, the last Achaemenid king, made his final, desperate stand. He stationed his Immortals, still the empire's finest, around his royal chariot, not in a conventional line, but in a formation entirely new to the Greeks, a hollow square. This was a living fort, bristling in every direction, positioned within the broader Persian battle line. Archers on the inner faces fired over the heads of the outer spearmen, creating a deadly, all-around defense. When Alexander's elite companion cavalry, led by the man himself, punched through the Persian left flank with their characteristic ferocity, the Immortals pivoted like a single, massive door. They presented fresh faces, fresh shields, and fresh spears to the attacking Macedonians. Ancient sources, particularly Arrian, credit this innovative hollow square with delaying Alexander long enough for Darius to escape the field, though at an unimaginable cost. The formation, designed for defense, became a death trap when exposed to the relentless, crushing power of the Macedonian Sarissa pikes. The losses were horrific. Arrian, ever the dramatic chronicler, says the ground was so thick with Persian dead, the Macedonians walked on bodies. Yet not a single Immortal is recorded breaking ranks, not a single man turning to flee, until Darius's standard, the symbol of his presence and command, finally fell. The square bought the king precious hours, allowing him to escape and prolong the war, however briefly. But it also bought the empire its last sunset. It was a testament to their unwavering discipline, their ultimate sacrifice in the face of overwhelming odds. The young conqueror, Alexander, was many things, but he was never one to ignore a good lesson, even from a defeated foe. He admired what he had destroyed. After Gaugamela, instead of simply disbanding or executing the surviving Immortals, he kept 1,000 of them as a ceremonial bodyguard, rearming them in the Macedonian style. It was a shrewd move, a way to absorb their prestige and expertise. More importantly, Alexander didn't just admire, he adopted. He integrated their decimal system of organization into his own armies, recognizing its inherent efficiency. He incorporated their combined arms drills, seeing the devastating potential of coordinated cavalry and infantry attacks, and perhaps most profoundly, he embraced their habit of rapid replacement, ensuring his own elite units maintained their strength and morale. These were not minor changes. These were fundamental shifts that would travel with him all the way to India and echo down through the Hellenistic armies that followed his empire's fragmentation. The Immortals, as a distinct Persian institution, might have vanished with the Achaemenid Empire, but their military DNA survived, influencing generations of warfare every time a successor king shouted for cavalry to wheel by squadrons while his phalanx held firm. Their legacy was not just in their own battles, but in the tactics of their conquerors. The influence of the Immortals didn't stop with Alexander. Their methods, their mystique, and their very name resonated across millennia. Roman emperors, for instance, later maintained their own elite cavalry guard, the Equites Singularis, drawing on a similar concept of a highly loyal, professional standing force. The Byzantine Empire, centuries later, fielded its formidable cataphracts, heavily armored cavalry units that operated with a discipline and combined arms approach that owed something to Persian precedent. Even the legendary Ottoman Janissaries, the Sultan's elite infantry, traced part of their unique ideology: slave soldiers bound by absolute loyalty and immense privilege, to the ancient Persian model of a royal guard that was distinct from the general levy. The Persian Immortals were far more than just an elite military unit. They were an argument made flesh, a living, breathing testament to a particular philosophy of warfare. Their argument was simple yet profound. Discipline beats raw muscle. A system that replaces its parts faster than they can break looks truly immortal, and warfare, ultimately, is at least half theater, half psychological game. They didn't always win every battle. Marathon, Plataea, and Gaugamela are stark proof of that. But they always, without fail, made their opponents pay a truly exorbitant price for proving them wrong. They forced their enemies to fight harder, to innovate, to adapt in ways they never expected. In an ancient age when kings measured their power in hectares of tribute wheat and the sheer size of their armies, the Immortals showed that perception could be forged, drilled, and marched across continents to achieve strategic goals. They were, in essence, the original Special Operations Force, small enough to maintain their elite status and cohesion, yet large enough to decide the fate of empires. And they were branded so incredibly well, so effectively, that their chilling, awe-inspiring name still echoes through history, 2.5 millennia later. That's a legacy that truly endures. If you enjoyed marching through the dust of Marathon and standing shoulder to shoulder in the hollow square at Gaugamela, do us a favor and tap that like button so the algorithm knows history beats clickbait every time. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Next week, we're unpacking how the Sasanian cataphracts reinvented heavy cavalry and gave Rome nightmares at Edessa. We'll see you on the next battlefield.